Hello and welcome, and thanks for tuning in to the second video in the Employee Insurance Modeling series. I'm Jeremy with Ray & Associates, and today we're going to go ahead and look at a simplified example of how to build a COUNTIFS function and a SUMIFS function. Okay, so let's jump into it. On this worksheet here, I kind of have a small little data set that lists a number of different colors and quantitative values. Okay, so over here I want to summarize the information, where I want to count the number of times the word blue appears, but then also I would like to sum up the quantitative values that are listed in this column. So let's start by doing the count. So we'll start with equals, and we'll start typing COUNTIF. Now, Excel has two functions for this: a COUNTIF function that only allows you to use one set of criteria, and then if I arrow down, we have a COUNTIFS function that allows multiple criteria. In this example, we really only need one criteria because we're just going to be saying, in this range of cells, how many times does the word blue appear. But because the syntax is different between a COUNTIF and a COUNTIFS, I just always use the COUNTIFS. Okay? So the way this one works is, again, the formula assist tells you the arguments, whether they're required, and the piece that's new here now from my tutorials is the ... means that there's additional arguments that could be made. So we could have criteria range 1 along with criteria, and then as we went out, we could have a second set of criteria range and criteria arguments, and third and fourth, and so on. For this example, we only need one set of criteria though. So the criteria range means the range we're going to be evaluating, which is this range here. Because I'm going to copy this formula down for all the remaining colors in this column, I need an absolute reference so that we always stay locked on cells E6 through E12 over here as we copy the formula down. So I hit F4, that included the dollar signs for the absolute reference. We comma. Now if we're evaluating that range, we want to return a count of the number of times that for this cell that blue appears. So we'll just point to that cell reference. So as we copy this down, the first function will be looking to count in that range how many times blue appears. When we copy it down here, it'll be looking for green, and so on and so forth. So we just use a reference to the cell that's one to the left, essentially, from where we're building this function. Since we only have one argument, you can see the syntax started to show the criteria range 2, but you can see it's optional with the bracket. So we will just go ahead and close the parentheses now and accept that formula. If we hover over the bottom right, there's a little square on the cell and the cursor changes. We can double click that and it will send it all the way down the column. So we can see that blue, green, and purple only appeared one time, and red and yellow appeared 2 times. Red and yellow appeared 2 times. Okay, so great. So now we have a count of how many times those color names appeared within the criteria range that we were evaluating. Now the SUMIFS function is very similar. There's just an additional argument. So let's start typing that. We type SUMIFS, like same type of idea as we have the singular version, which only accepts one set of criteria, where we have the SUMIFS that accepts multiple. And I just, for the sake of really only dealing with one set of syntax, because I use them so often, I'm familiar with them, where I just prefer to use SUMIFS always, regardless of how many criteria I'm going to need. So the first argument is the sum range. So now what we want to do is we want to sum up these values in the second column. So for where we're looking right now, we're looking to say, okay, well, for every time that the word blue appears in this column, we want to sum the value that occurs. Okay, so The sum range is, these are the values we're going to be summing. F4 for the absolute reference, since we'll be copying this formula down this range over here. Comma for the next argument. The criteria range is going to be the same criteria range as it was for the COUNTIFS function, where we need to be analyzing these criteria here for the color. So we only want to sum it if blue is returned as a match. Okay, so again, we need the F4 key to add the dollar signs for the absolute reference, and then finally comma for the last required argument in the function is the criteria. So we just point to the cell reference over here, A6, and as we copy it down, it'll copy those references down this range as well. We close parentheses and we'll hit enter, and you can see that blue only appeared one time, and we summed the values. We got 20. Down here at the bottom right, once the cursor changes, essentially we can double click and it sends it down. So for instance, if we look at red, we see that red appears here and here, and we have 30 and 30. The sum of that would be 60. So that's the simple version of how the COUNTIFS and SUMIFS functions work, and we are going to be using those in this model to provide a summary to count the number of employees that are in each insurance plan, along with summing the total monthly costs associated with each plan. Okay, so tune into the next video and we'll elaborate on how this model works. Thanks.